What's up? How's it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. You are watching Rochester First. It is Thursday, November the 13th. Bills and Bucks coming up on Sunday. And we've got a great show for you today. I got a lot of cool stuff to get to. We will talk Bills and Bucks for sure. We'll dive into the game, talk about the matchups, both sides of the ball. This is a very fascinating matchup for a number of reasons. We'll also talk about Keon Coleman. His effort has been questioned. I'll explain why. And I'll also talk about what the solution might be. Plus, Christian Benford, fascinating guy. Talked to him yesterday. Want to explain a little more about what I think goes into his unique brand of leadership. But today I want to start with a story that's not Bills related. This is actually something that is just breaking recently. So apparently the NFL owners have filed a grievance against the NFLPA. And the thing behind it are those report cards that the NFLPA has been releasing. I think it's the last 3 seasons. They come out April, March, somewhere in there in the spring. And basically what the report cards are, if you have not seen them, is the NFLPA, the Players Association, will pull all the players in the league. I don't know if 100% respond, but it's quite a number close to 100%. Basically to get their feedback on a number of areas. Essentially, the work environment for players. What is the training staff like? What is the dining facilities like? What are the family facilities like when families show up on game day? What's the travel like? All these different parts of what NFL players go through on a day-to-day basis, field conditions, training staff, size of the staff. They even get responses on what the players think of owners and head coaches. And over the last few years, I have felt like these report cards have been one of the best tools for improving the day-to-day life of NFL players. And you might think, well, they make millions of dollars and play a kid's game. What more do they want? And that's the simpleton view. It's not incorrect, but it is totally missing the point on what these guys go through on a regular basis. The work level required to be in the NFL is extreme. I think a lot of us think you just got to be really talented at football. It is a lot more than that. You need to be able to put the time in day after day, week after week. And owners who are billionaires, doesn't mean that they have infinite resources, but they certainly have, you would think, enough to make some of these things, if not all of these things, better, are the ones who are primarily responsible for how easy and maybe how efficient these players are doing their jobs. And simply how much they enjoy being at the facility, being with the people who they work with on a regular basis. It's not just the head coach, not just the coordinator, it's the position coach, it's the trainer, it's the assistant trainer, it's the equipment guy. All that stuff goes into how a player exists hour by hour in the NFL. And these report cards have been pretty much the go-to reference point for how good a job owners are doing. And as a result, it has been shown to the world what teams do not provide the best travel accommodations, what teams do not have the best dining options, what teams do not have a head coach who respects players' time, and 1,000 other things that go into what players do on a regular basis. And as a result, a number of teams have improved things. You've seen multiple reports the last 3 years about teams getting new locker rooms, travel facilities being updated, things being changed. The good owners, the good management teams, the good front offices will look at these reports and say, okay, here's a spot where I can get better. Let's go make an effort to improve that. And it's not necessarily that the facilities or anything before were ridiculously lacking, but there's been a comparison out there. Now, it's not just a player in an organization or an organization dealing with a player in a vacuum. They get to compare. Buffalo gets to see what Cincinnati's doing, gets to see what Miami's doing, gets to see what Dallas is doing, gets to see what Los Angeles is doing. And understanding what's working better and what's not up to the standard that it probably should be. So I think these things have been fantastic. It's been one of the best things to happen to the NFL is that players anonymously get to dish on what's terrible about their teams. The owners, yeah, they get embarrassed by it, but at least they know what's going on and have a motivation to fix it. And in large part, things have been fixed, not totally. You know, the Bills, for example, every single year have gotten, I think, F ratings when it comes to their travel accommodations. Not many people, whether it's the players or even staff I talk to, have said that the team playing for the Bills is accommodating enough, big enough, is generally what the player complaint has been, that coaches sit in first class, players sit in more cramped conditions back in the plane. But that's just one part of what happens with the Bills. So what apparently is going on now is that, like I said, NFL owners have filed a grievance against the NFLPA regarding this. And apparently the person behind this is Jets owner Woody Johnson. Unsurprisingly, Woody Johnson got an F from Jets players for his work as an owner in last year's report card. Now, this isn't just a Woody Johnson thing. I'm sure there are other owners involved. And to be fair, there is language in the CBA that essentially says players and owners can't complain about each other to the media. That's the very, very short, abridged version of what that language says. I have never been more on the side of players than I am in this discussion. It seems pretty clear that what is driving this is that some owners, namely Woody Johnson, don't like the fact that their dirty laundry, their lack of effort, their inability or unwillingness to spend to a level that would be appropriate, they don't like it that everybody gets to know. And this is why they're complaining about it. Among the different owner arguments for this grievance, there was one quote that the union report card, the thing that I'm talking about that everybody puts out, adversely affected the reliability of the CBA mandated survey. Apparently, the CBA says that owners and players should have a survey of players to essentially do what this survey is doing, to find out what's wrong, to listen to players, to get suggestions. It's a nice little suggestion box, more or less, that the CBA has already included in it. And owners are saying that the one the union's been putting out on its own adversely affects the reliability of the other survey. Well, the last one of the other surveys happened in 2015, according to a source. And by the way, this is an ESPN report. Don Van Natta, there's another reporter involved, but the guys at ESPN who are good at unearthing this stuff, the investigative guys, these are the ones who are putting this report out. This isn't just a public knowledge or the NFLPA or the NFL releasing a press release. This has been a story that was dug up and reported on literally hours ago. In this story, like I said, the last time the league and the players did one of these joint surveys was 10 years ago. Now, according to this source, when the league and players have met about these surveys or have met to discuss issues, there have been tangible results. So things have apparently gotten better, according to this source. I guarantee they're not getting better as fast as they've gotten better after these NFLPA surveys have been put out. Another complaint from teams or from the NFL side, from the owner side, is that the NFLPA doesn't exactly share all the details of their survey. So the NFLPA does this poll of players, puts out the results, and according to an NFL executive, a team executive told ESPN that, like, look, those things could help, but the NFLPA doesn't share the details. They don't tell you how they're conducting their survey. Okay, fine, if you say so. The NFLPA is also, or the NFL owners also feel like the results of these NFLPA report cards are tainted, that they're not accurate. They're not fair. I don't know where they're getting that from, because the surveys to me seem pretty clear to be a poll of players. You ask players to respond in a number of different areas. What do you think? What could be better? What is good? I don't know how that could be tainted. That seems like a pretty foolproof way to find out what's going on with the players in your league. At the end of this article on the ESPN site, one owner told ESPN, quote, "Only the owners who get bad grades are the ones who are mad." Because of course they are. Of course they are. NFL owners do have one point that I can understand. They have said that these NFLPA surveys do in large part exist just to make owners look bad. And that's not why they exist, but there is a lot of borderline gossipy type material in there that players say this about an owner. Players didn't like that. There is a number of items in there where maybe the NFLPA is a little bit unnecessarily taking a slap at ownership about what different teams have problems with. Now, to be fair, when players have raved about things, that's in there too. But if you read these surveys, and I went back and looked at them before coming on today, there are certainly a number of things that the NFLPA could be gentler about if they wanted to be. They could use different language that wouldn't be quite as incendiary. So I get all that. But as someone, and I'll give them credit, it's yards per pass on X. You know, one of the more popular Bills X feeds out there, does a good job with film breakdowns and stuff. As he responded to me when I posted about this on X myself, Thad Brown 7 earlier, he said, sunlight is a great disinfectant. 100% true. We have found out through these report cards any number of issues that are happening around the league. We know whether the Bills are doing things as well as every other team in the league. We know why teams like the Bills and the Jets get bad grades. And the Bills last year were 23rd in the league. I don't know what the Jets were overall, but it wasn't good either. At the very least, this is exposing what's wrong with how owners treat players, what kind of facilities they have. There are so many things that this simply and directly exposes in a way that every workplace should have. I think we all should work at a place where we can respond anonymously to things we don't like. At least owners would know it. At least people who manage you would know it. And yeah, the ones who don't care, they're not going to do anything about it. Or maybe the ones who simply can't afford to do it in a different workplace situation, not for an NFL owner. And I can understand that. I don't care, who you are as management or ownership. There again is not infinite resources available. But when we're talking about the NFL, a league that has revenues in the billions plural, I don't know what the recent number is, but I think they're getting close to $100 billion in total revenue. You would think there is money out there to get a bigger team playing. You would think there is money out there to have a little better menu when it comes to the diet these players have to eat and consume on a regular basis. You would think there's an opportunity to add one more dietitian on staff, one more masseuse, one more trainer. And these report cards have shown you where the issues are, where the holes are. And for the NFL to turn around and say, we don't like it, and to try and look, the NFL might win this, because if you look at the language in the CBA, it does seem like what the NFLPA has done is to gone against that one provision that essentially the two sides can't dish about each other to the media publicly. So yeah, there might be an issue with that. And the NFLPA might be on the wrong when it comes to that. But this is still an effective tool. And for owners to be fighting against it makes no sense to me. Sean, I got to take a break or no? All right. We're going to take a break quick. I can come back and talk about this more after this. You're watching the Endgame. I'm Thad Brown. We're going to check out something that's going wrong here, I guess. I don't know. We'll be back right after this. Hey, back with you here, Thad Brown on the Endgame. This is Thursday, November 13th. You're watching Rochester First. I know some of you might have missed that first block of the show. Just to kind of, wrap up those thoughts. We were talking about the recent report over at ESPN that NFL owners have filed a grievance against the NFLPA. They don't like the fact that the NFLPA puts out those report cards every spring, March and April or whatever, to talk about what's wrong with teams. And look, bottom line, those report cards have done more good than most anything the NFL or the NFLPA has done over the last, 3, 4, 5 decades. The fact that they are exposing any number of problems, not necessarily in a way to be like, haha, gotcha, just in a way to say, this is not what we want. This is not what we hope to have. Or even, this is not what they have over at that team over there that is in the same league. And a lot of this has been about the Bills finding out what the Bengals do, the Bengals finding out what the Chiefs do, the Chiefs finding out what the Seahawks do, and understanding what the standard is or what the standard can be even. It's not necessarily to poke, to point fingers, to embarrass, and like I said, to expose necessarily every owner as deficient. The goal of these is to make things better for the players, and largely that has been what's happened. Now, when you got Woody Johnson, and I know he can't be the only owner who's responsible for this, but when you have owners like that who have been getting bad grades, who might not like the bad PR, who might not like the fact that, this is stereotypically the rich person getting embarrassed in public and not liking the fact that anyone would ever say anything bad about that, could very easily be a part of this. There's no way I'm getting behind the owners on this. There's no way this is the right way to go about it, even if the specific language in the CBA says that owners and players can't dish publicly on each other, which is, I think that's exactly what the owners are leaning on as a legal methodology to erase these report cards. And they might, from a strictly legal point of view, have a point. But in the grand scheme of what's good for the league and good for the players who make this league what it is, these NFLPA report cards have been one of the best things to occur in the NFL. And if somehow the NFL owners win this grievance and the NFLPA report cards go away, for the record, the NFLPA has said they're going to continue. They've told membership they're going to continue with surveys and going to continue to progressing towards releasing the next report card in the spring. And they're going to fight this grievance, obviously. If for some reason NFL owners win this, I am happy to conduct the surveys and put out the report cards by myself, because this has been, like I said, one of the best things to happen in the NFL. And there have been tangible results. The Jets, for example, built a new locker room for their team this year. They didn't say it directly, but it certainly seemed like the NFLPA report in the spring that said their locker facility was one of the worst in the league was directly a motivator for that. This is something that needs to continue. It's been a good idea, and it should not go away, even if a few owners are embarrassed. And like I said, the thing I most believe about this story is the one owner at the very end who said only the owners who get bad grades are the ones who are driving this, because of course they are. All right, let's talk about the Bills now. Bills take on the Bucks on Sunday, and this is a fascinating game. Primarily, right off the bat, you look at the giant big picture overview of these two teams, and the matchups in a couple ways are almost oil and water. For example, you've got a Bills defense that has thrived on creating turnovers. The Bucks are number 2 at preventing them. They don't turn the ball over hardly at all. They don't commit many penalties either. They won't beat themselves. You've got a Bills offense that runs the ball very well against the Bucks defense that generally is one of the best in the league at stopping the run. And then you've got a Bills defense that has been one of the leakiest against the run all year against a Tampa offense that really doesn't want to run the ball. So this game might be a situation where the Bills are begging a team to run the ball on them because it's a better option than Baker Mayfield throwing to Emeka Egbuka and potentially more. So let's talk about this matchup. We'll start when the Bucks have the ball. So when it's Tampa on offense, remember the Bills run D, like I said, they're not one of the better ones in the NFL. The interesting thing about what the Bills' problem is when it comes to run defense is that they're actually 9th in the NFL in yards allowed before contact, but 32nd, dead last in yards allowed after contact. So they get to the ball carrier, they just can't bring them down. You know what the problem is? It's tackling. Tackling has been the big issue for the Bills with the run game. And the problem for them in this game, whether or not the Bucks want to run it, I think they're going to be able, Tampa Bay will, to get theirs on offense. Baker Mayfield's going to find a way to 200 plus yards. They've been at 248 or better in 5 of their last 7 games. One of the reasons they didn't get a 250-yard passing game against the Saints, and one of those 2 where they did not reach that number, was because it was a blowout. The game was over early. They did not need to pass. Tampa's offensive line is okay, not great. They did just get Luke Gedeke back from injury. He's their right tackle. He's been out since week 2, played last week against the Patriots. And this is one of the problems when it comes to the Bills trying to get after Baker Mayfield here. When the Bills last played a good passing offense, it wasn't all that long ago. It was the Chiefs game. You had Joey Bosa primarily, Greg Rousseau to a lesser extent. Michael Hoyt was in there too. Those guys were all pretty ever-present in the Chiefs' backfield. One of the main reasons is the Chiefs' offensive line is very weak on the edges. Josh Simmons didn't play. Juwan Taylor, Jalen Moore. The Bills abused those 2 guys all night long. The Bucs offensive line is the opposite. The Bucs offensive line is weakest at guard. Dan Feeney, who was with the Bills earlier this year as like a body in camp, is starting at guard for Tampa right now. So you can attack them in the middle, but on the edges, you got Tristan Wirfs, who's one of the best in the game at left tackle. And like I said, they just get the other starter, right tackle, Gadecki, back last week after a long-term injury. The Bills on defense, of course, are much better attacking the quarterback on the edges. Joey Bosa, Greg Rousseau. That's where the primary source of your pass rush is going to be if you're Buffalo. So unlike the Chiefs game, where when those edges get after it, they're facing, C-, D+ tackles. In this game, the two tackles they face are going to be on the B+ side, if not better. So now it's on, if you want to create a pass rush against Tampa Bay, you got to do it up the middle. So that means it's on Deion Walker, TJ Sanders if he plays, Daquan Jones. These are guys who have had good pass rushing moments and certainly have it in them, but they're not at Oliver. They're not at the Joey Bosa level. So where Tampa is weakest protecting the quarterback is where the Bills are weakest rushing the quarterback, and that likely favors the Bucs because that means Baker Mayfield's probably going to have time to do most anything that he wants to do, and Baker Mayfield's been very good navigating the pocket, scrambling, buying time for himself anyway. So when Tampa wants to pass, you feel like the Bills either might have to blitz, maybe you put pressure on those guys in the middle with extra bodies, or you hope that you get a win in a spot where you're not really significantly in the advantage. Maybe Deion Walker has a game. I mean, the guy has it in him. We've seen him with the ability to have the quicks to pass rush a quarterback. But if you're depending on Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau to do it in this game, might not be the ideal situation. And then on top of that, going back to the run game, look, Tampa doesn't want to run it. Their starting running back, Bucky Irving, has been out the last few weeks, but Bucky Irving was at practice yesterday, at least limited. And Chris Godwin, who hasn't played all year, is also limited in practice. So you've got a Bucs offense that's already been pretty good. Not great, but pretty good most of the year, who might be getting back one or two important weapons against the Bills. Now, this is already a Bills defense that has not been very good against number one receivers. We saw what Jalen Waddle did last week, Drake London a couple weeks before then, Stephon Diggs, Zay Flowers, the list goes on and on and on of the number one receivers who have had plenty of success against Buffalo. If you get Emeka Egbuka in there and also have to have an opportunity to have Chris Godwin to play next to him, it's going to be a lot for the Bills secondary to try and bite off. Now, I think Christian Benford will be back for this game, so the Bills at least will have some help in that defensive backfield. But again, I feel like in the passing game, Tampa is going to get a nice chunk of yardage. They're going to be able to move the ball that way. It won't be, who's the best passing offense in the NFL right now? Seattle, maybe? I don't know. It won't be record-setting, but the Bucs will be able to, like I said, get theirs in the passing game. What the Bills, I think, need to win in this game is you can't let the run game be a weapon also. If Tampa can be effective in two ways, be two-dimensional, and be really effective in both dimensions, the Bills are going to have a tough time keeping up. This is going to be a game where you're going to have to score 30 to even have a chance if the Bills can't stop the run at all. The one thing about the Bills' run D I want to point out, by the way, early this year, the Bills have faced some good running backs. I mean, obviously, Derrick Henry, then Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane twice. Panthers have a pretty good running game, surprisingly. The Saints aren't bad with Alvin Kamara, and they had to face Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller. Miller got hurt like the next week. So the Bills have faced upper-level either run games or running backs. But going forward, the run oppositions for Buffalo are not nearly that dangerous. Tampa, maybe with Bucky Irving in the first game back from a long-term injury, we'll see. The Steelers, who are not a great run team. Houston, who can't do anything on offense right now. The Bengals, look, it could be Joe Burrow. If it's Joe Burrow and Chase Brown, then obviously that's a dangerous offense. But even then, what the Bengals do best is not running the ball. The Patriots, who, now we'll see what Travion Henderson becomes, but when they were in Buffalo a few weeks ago, they were not a strong running team. And then Cleveland, Quinshon Judkins is good, but again, that's an offense in general that is not very dangerous. So the Bills' run defense that currently sits, I think, 30th, 31st in the NFL, whatever it is, the schedule softens up quite a bit for them. We might be talking about this run defense a little bit differently when we get to later in the season. But for this particular game, I think one of the keys is the Bills cannot get run on like they got run on last week or against Atlanta. Because if you open up that side of the offense to Tampa, on top of what they can do passing the ball, no matter who you face or who's on the other side from the Bucs, it's going to be really hard for the Bills to keep up. All right, now, when the Bills have the ball, run game, again, to me is the priority because Tampa's got one of the best run defenses in the NFL. They're 7th in the league, EPA per rush allowed. Only 3 teams all year have gotten to 100 yards rushing as a team. And 2 of them, Detroit and New England, basically did it because they had running backs who broke like 60-yard touchdowns. New England had 2 of them last week with Travion Henderson, and then Detroit had like a 78-yarder with Jahmyr Gibbs 3-4 weeks ago. So if you don't hit the monster home run, essentially no one has run for 100 yards on Tampa all year long. Now, to be fair, the Bucs have not had a lot of tests in the run game that get up to the level of what the Bills are. They did face Bijan week 1, Saquon Barkley, but the Eagles have kind of been a mess. Obviously, the Lions. They took on Christian McCaffrey, but the San Francisco offense has not been very good either. So the Bills are number 1 pretty much across the board when it comes to running efficiency, total running yards, whatever you want to say. Because it's not just James Cook, it's Josh Allen too. So although the Bucs run defense has been not elite, but certainly top 10, this will be a different level of a test for Tampa. And as I've told you, they are at least susceptible to the home run hitter at running back, and the Bills 100% have one of those guys. So I think the Bucs can be had in this matchup. I think the Bills can have more success in the running game than the general Tampa Bay stats would say. You know, Vita Vea in the middle of the defense at defensive tackle, number 50. You're going to hear about him all afternoon on Sunday. He's the number 1 guy the Bills got to get after. But the thing is, the Bills don't run a ton right up the middle. There's pitches, there's leads to the tackle box or to the C gap. They've been running pitches a lot lately, so they don't have to run the ball, right straight ahead at the A gap to succeed. They can go outside and, for the most part, have made most of their money doing exactly that. So although Vea is a pain in the neck and the Bucs run defense in general is pretty good, it's not, you go back to what I talked about with the Bills on offense here, to where the Bucs tackles are the perfect overcards for the Bills, pretty good rushing defensive ends. In this case, Buffalo doesn't have to run their offense exactly at Tampa's strength, Vea in the middle. Now, when Buffalo passes the ball, here's a concern. According to Football Insights, and this is essentially an EPA stat, so I'm going to assume they're correct, Josh Allen this year is elite when he is not blitzed. He's one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL when he is not blitzed in the pocket. When he is blitzed, he becomes just slightly above average. Tampa has the 6th highest blitz rate in the NFL. They're going to bring the pain. They're going to send bodies at the Bills over and over and over. Generally, the Buffalo's offensive line is pretty good sorting those things out. And I think Buffalo can be okay in that spot. But if this is a game where Tampa wins on a few blitzes, if they're getting free rushers, not necessarily over and over, but a few times, it only takes a couple of plays to end drives and to really change this game. So that, while I don't think that's going to be a game changer, that's certainly something I'm watching for in this game. Bottom line for the Bills here, I think they have to be at least competitive, if not a winner, when it comes to the run game. You got to be able to run the ball at least a little bit. We've seen what happens to the Bills' run offense, or to the Bills' offense in general, when they can't run the ball. Oh, it doesn't matter who you're playing. Even against Miami, who has one of the worst defenses in the NFL. If you stop that Bills' run game, that offense goes into molasses. And without Dalton Kincaid, most likely, it's going to make it even tougher. I know Josh Palmer looks like he might be back. The Bills signed Mecole Hardman. We'll talk about him, or Mecole Hardman. We'll talk about him in a little bit. So the Bills might have a little bit of help coming back. But this is not a game, and really any game, this is not an offense, I should say, that you want to be able to rely on throwing the ball, or have to rely on throwing the ball. The Bills have to get something going in the run game. And on the flip side, you can't allow Tampa to run the ball at will like other teams have, because they're going to be able to throw it. The other parts of this game, when you talk about third downs, red zone, turnovers, that kind of thing, Tampa actually is surprisingly not good when it comes to red zone and third down situations. They are bottom half of the league on offense and defense. I was stunned to see the offensive numbers. Baker Mayfield, for all the moxie, all the comebacks and everything, I think they were 17th in third downs, 24th in red zone. That's an opportunity for the Bills to get teams off the field, or to get this Bucs team off the field. Their third down defense is actually top 12 in the league right now. One of the few things that statistically they did well against the Dolphins was stop Miami on third down last week. The last few weeks have been pretty good for this third down defense. So that's an opportunity for the Bills defense. If you can't necessarily prevent the Bucs from moving the ball play to play to play through the air, if you can get them off the field in 3rd and 6 a bunch of times, it's a big part of this game. Like I said before, Tampa is very good at not beating themselves. Top 2 in the NFL in terms of turnovers allowed, top 10 in penalties allowed, which is also kind of surprising for a Baker Mayfield team. You feel like it's a gunslinging team. I think it makes it hard for this Bills defense to get enough stops in this game if you're not going to get the freebies with the turnovers. And obviously those aren't, plays that are free. They're created a lot by the defense, but that's been the lifeblood of what this Bills team has been able to do. So got to be able to win in the run game. You're going to have to find a way to play defense without creating turnovers. I think the best opportunity for the Bills defense in terms of big plays is just getting the Bucs off the field. They're pretty good at not allowing sacks, but the offensive line in general is not great. Again, where you want to attack them is up the middle. If the Bills can get some of those third down stops, get Tampa off the field, get the run game going, I think they got a very good opportunity to win this game. The other part of this too is the Bills are home and they're going to be more desperate. They're going to be the team motivated coming off of that ugly, ugly loss in Miami. And just in terms of where they are in the standings, Buffalo has a lot more motivation, because they're chasing uphill at New England, whereas Tampa's 6-3, and the only team really chasing them in their own division is Carolina at 5-5. So Tampa's got a 1.5 game lead against a team that I think still no one really takes seriously in a division that's pretty bad. The desperate team in this game is more likely to be Buffalo. So those things do matter in a game like this, a game that's this close. I still tend to lead Tampa in terms of a prediction right now. But this is going to be a fun game, a tight game, and the Bills are very much going to be in it. When it comes to what the Bills do on offense without Dalton Kincaid, someone's going to have to step up when it comes to the pass-catching group. I think Khalil Shakir, right at the top of the list. Dawson Knox, to me, is not out of the question. I think you still need some production from that tight end spot. So I look at 88 as a guy who can be an impact player in this game. Josh Palmer, if he's in, I've liked his game all year. I don't think the Bills use him enough. I think he can be a factor. But someone whose name we will always turn back to is Keon Coleman. And now Keon coming out of this game against Miami was questioned for his effort. And I didn't notice it during the game watching live, but back on film, you could see it pretty clearly that he was not going 100%. Not on every play, at least. And look, there are some guys who you see a professional lack of effort. I would compare it to, you don't necessarily need every baseball player running out every ground ball in the middle of June. By the same token, if it's a dive run up the middle and you're positioned way to the outside as a receiver, I'm not going to get on you for not going 100% on those plays. And Keon Coleman is not the only Bills player who has been guilty of that. But there was more in this game. It seemed like Keon on a number of clear out routes was not running as hard as he could have been. There were other plays where it seemed like the effort wasn't 100% there. And it became a topic of discussion with Sean McDermott. He was asked if he was satisfied with Keon's effort. And his response wasn't yes. It was, if I have a problem, I'll talk with him, which is a fine answer. But it does not necessarily mean that Keon's effort has been fine. And what it looked like on film was that it was definitely not fine. Not 100%. So what do the Bills do now? Well, to be honest, you kind of got an answer right in house if you want to. Gabe Davis has been working back from the practice squad. Looked pretty good at practice yesterday when I was there in Buffalo. And the thing about Gabe is that if you want to go to Gabe Davis, he would be about a perfect replacement for Keon Coleman. He does so many things that Coleman does. He's an outside receiver. He's a good blocker. You actually would gain in a couple spots with Davis too, because Gabe Davis is a better separator, a guy that Josh Allen probably trusts a little bit more, maybe a lot more at this point. He's even a better blocker than Keon Coleman. So if you wanted to send a message to Coleman, if you wanted to put him on the bench and say that effort against Miami was not good enough. And really, even the entire season for Keon Coleman at this point was not good enough. This was a guy that got benched earlier in the year for an infraction that Sean McDermott would not detail to the media. You can make this switch and probably not lose much of anything at all. Now, look, Keon Coleman is going to be better in a physical catch situation. You know, that's probably the knock on Gabe Davis has been when you get him in a contested catch spot, he's not the guy you want on the field. And Keon Coleman hasn't been Mr. Elite at that, but he's been better. So if you go Keon to Gabe Davis, you're going to lose that athleticism. You're going to lose that ceiling of a guy who's so athletically gifted that he can make catches most other guys can't. Again, Keon hasn't done it a lot to where you feel good about putting him out there expecting that to happen, but Gabe Davis does not have that ceiling. Regardless, if Sean McDermott wanted to go this route and either put Keon on the bench or maybe even make him inactive for this game, Gabe Davis is a viable, reasonable, available replacement. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go one or the other. You can play them both. I think in the ideal world, with Keon Coleman playing well, playing more up to his potential, I think what the Bills would want to do is put Gabe Davis in the Terrell Shavers spot. So it'd be the reserve receiver. You come in, you use him on rundowns. He's still a legit receiver, so he can be at least somewhat of a receiving threat to where when you put, whether it's Shavers or Gabe Davis on the field, defenses can't just overplay the run because that guy can cause you a problem down the field. Now, I think Davis, even coming off a torn ligament injury, a relatively big-time knee injury, has a chance to be a better player than Shavers has been. I like Shavers. I think he's a hard worker. There are things he does well, but he has not really changed the equation much when it comes to what the Bills do down the field. You know, with the whole receiving group that's been lackluster to say the least in terms of separating, winning, creating opportunities for Josh Allen down the field, Shavers is not moving the needle there. Gabe Davis, I think, has the chance to do that. Not wildly so. Look, the Bills have had this problem with receivers going back multiple years. This is not just a this year problem. And Gabe Davis was a part of that problem in prior seasons. But from what the Bills have right now, you know, if we're talking about Gabe Davis or Terrell Shavers, I think Gabe Davis would be an improvement. And again, it's not much of a knock on Shavers. I think for what Shavers has shown you, he's been pretty respectable in that reserve receiver role. I think Gabe Davis would be better. Now, there's special teams considerations to be had there because Shavers is a guy who contributes in that spot. I don't know if Gabe Davis would do that as easily. But regardless, back to the major point. If Sean McDermott wants to send a message to Keon Coleman, Gabe Davis is ready and willing to make that relatively painless. Now, Gabe Davis obviously is not the only receiver who is on the practice squad who could be an option pretty soon. The Bills just brought in Mecole Hardman. He joined the team, practiced for the first time yesterday. Love talking to him, by the way. Now, this is a guy that's been on the beach for the last couple months, hasn't had a team, so the fact that he was excited to talk to media, smiley, not a big surprise. I would think if you're someone who's looking for a job and suddenly has a job, you'd be somewhat excited as well. You'll see here in this video, Hardman was doing a number of return drills in his first practice yesterday, and I think that's a spot where he really could offer the Bills some assistance. Now, he hasn't been a guy who's had a lot of returns in the recent past. He's only had 14 returns his last 3 seasons total. That's punt and kickoff together. Now, when he was younger, first couple of years, he was a return man quite a bit. So he's got the experience. He can do the job. And obviously, the speed aspect that he brings to this offense is something that not a lot of other guys have. So right off the bat, he's already a benefit to the Bills if you put him on the field. Now, the problem with Mecole Hardman and why he has gone through a number of different teams the last few years is that he really isn't much of a receiver. Essentially, the book on him is that the further away from the line of scrimmage you get, the less effective he gets because he doesn't track the ball well. He doesn't make catches well. He's the kind of guy that you want to just throw the ball to him quick on a screen, let him use his athleticism to make plays. He's, you know, kind of the gadget guy, the Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, Isaiah McKenzie guy, but just not a very effective receiver. All that said, I think Hardman can be a help. Look, if he's just a better return man, he's already made an impact for this team. It's not easy to just throw him on the active roster as a return man either because, again, you're taking a player who's going to be doing one job. If that's all you want him to do is be a return man, and replacing someone else who theoretically is doing multiple likely special teams jobs. So you can't just say, oh, McCole Hardman's the return man unless he's wildly impactful there. And although he's been a decent return man and has, in theory, the speed to do it, the numbers say he hasn't been ridiculously great in his career returning the ball for the Bills. Now, the Bills' return games right now are well below average. So even if McCole Hardman's okay, it would be an improvement. Is that improvement enough to say, we're going to put this guy in the active roster and that's the only job he's going to do? I don't know. I think you'd want to get something out of him in the passing game as well. And you could put him out there in the Elijah Moore role, you know, in that end around gadget type thing as well to maybe justify his roster spot. Bottom line, I think it's a smart addition for the Bills. I think it's a guy who makes sense in terms of coming onto this team at this point in the year. Again, the speed element by itself is an improvement for the Bills, is something that I can get behind. How he fits to a roster and where he can exactly contribute, I think remains to be seen. But I could see a world where everything is clicking, everything's going right, where your receiving group is Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, assuming he gets his act together, and then Gabe Davis and McCole Hardman. That's a nice group that I think fits together pretty well because you have two guys on the outside as starters in Keon and Josh Palmer and Gabe Davis who can back either one of them up. You got Khalil Shakir at the slot, Hardman who can play a lot of that slot role, not necessarily in terms of the ability to get open and create separation that Shakir has, but regardless, he could do that job. You've got Hardman who can be your gadget guy, your end-around guy, and Davis who offers the experience not only to be an effective receiver, but a really effective blocker. So that I do think that five would be an improvement over the current five. And to be fair, Curtis Samuel and Elijah Moore were two of the better receivers for the Bills against the Dolphins in terms of getting open. You didn't see it much because Josh Allen's head is just such in a bad spot that he's missing some open receivers. But separate to that, Gabe Davis and I think McCole Hardman as the fourth and fifth receiver is something I at least want to see. I'm not saying it's going to work, but give me a look at it because it's not going to get much worse than what the Bills have, and their skill sets would fit very nicely with what A, the Bills need, and B, what they already have at receiver. All right, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Christian Benford and the way he approaches the game and the way he approaches leadership. He's a real fascinating guy to talk to, and I want to share a little what he had to say yesterday about how the Bills are going to bounce back from this Miami game and how he wants to move forward as a leader on this team. My name is Thad Brown. You are watching the Endgame here on Rochester First. But remember, the kids who are cool, the ones who always were the popular ones at every school dance you ever went to, they like to call this station Rock One. We're back after this. All right, Thad Brown back here with you on the Endgame. Bills and Bucks will be happening on Sunday. Should be a fun game. You can see it on your local CBS affiliate here in Rochester. That will be on, of course, right here, Channel 8. So the Bills last week lost to Miami, and one of the subplots of that game was how the Bills veterans, a few of them in the locker room afterwards, said that they felt that Miami wanted it more. They had more fire, more edge, whatever you want to call it. So this week, of course, yesterday, we're talking to the players. One of the topics of conversation is how do you prevent that from happening again? How do you address it? And Christian Benford is, one of the new leaders on this team, one of the younger guys who, through his talent and his ability as a starter, has become someone that other players follow. There was the shot this year at training camp where I remember a week or two in before Max Hairston got hurt, Hairston and Benford were having a long conversation in the middle of practice about who knows what. Assumably, it was about how to play corner. This is who Benford is now. He's a guy that other players go to, younger players will rely on, will lean on as someone who knows how to get it done. And Benford has always been a very unique guy to talk to. He's very soft-spoken and sometimes very difficult to get thoughts out of when it comes to virtually anything. But once you get to know him a little bit and you get to talk to him a little bit, he's a real thoughtful guy. He's got a running joke with a couple of the reporters. They try to throw riddles at each other every week. He's also the same guy who most people in the Bills organization will tell you, if there's one person on the Bills that you would want to go into a dark alley with, Christian Benford is at the top of most lists. So he's a fascinating guy in a lot of ways, even though as a speaker, you wouldn't see that fire, that determination. And then the way he goes about wanting to teach is something we talked a lot about yesterday, about being a leader, about being someone who is making sure what went wrong against Miami doesn't happen again. And as a soft-spoken guy, he's not a rah-rah in your face type player. He explains how he wants to lead. And he's going to talk about wanting to be a good example. But he has taken being a good example to a level I have never heard another player talk about before, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Listen to this.
I like when my actions show more, you know what I'm saying? I feel like you could learn a lot from somebody's actions rather than what they're saying. So I would just do it to the T. But then whatever they say, go extra mile for it. And when they see it, they see it. And whoever needs it, I'll just uplift them a little bit. And then if they need to see it, then come watch film with me. Let me show you how I look at myself and how I like dissect myself. So when the next time comes up, it's not like a snowball effect or a ripple effect or a domino effect. It just keep happening to me. No, like I correct it because I took the time to myself and dialed in what I need to fix up. And I showed them that. I'm not ready to be like, yo, look at yourself in the mirror, X, Y, Z. Nah, like I gotta handle my business, bro. We could chop it up if you need to, but I'm about to go look at myself in the mirror, look at this film and get myself prepared.
I like that a lot. I like the idea that he's not like he said, gonna, shout at a guy to say, you got to look at yourself in the mirror, point the thumb at you. And he said some of those things too, but that's not where he wants to be. He's also not going to be someone that's just going to do his thing and be aloof and say, hey, this is how you do it. If you want to do it right, watch me. He's going to go beyond that. He talked about, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to go, do it to the T is what he says there. Everything possible that you can do to the point where come watch film with me. Come sit down next to me. Watch how I make myself better. Watch how I be real with myself and learn from that. And I thought it was a fascinating way to go about being a leader, to teach other guys, to show them the way. We hear a lot about, you think about different leaders or different great quarterbacks. Tom Brady was always kind of a guy that would, or Dan Marino is the one I think of maybe most, who would yell in a guy's face. Some guys are more soft-spoken. Josh Allen is a leader on this team, but he's a little more of a guy you hang out with. He makes it fun. He keeps it light. There's a whole bunch of different ways to make it work in terms of leadership. And it probably helps out to have guys who come at it from a few different points of view. And I've always found Christian Benford's point of view to be one of the most interesting on this team. And I think that was another example of it there. So I wanted to give him a few minutes here to talk about how he's going about it in a spot where the Bills are facing some serious adversity. He's not always, like I said, an easy guy to get a conversation going with. He certainly has a time and a prompt that will allow him to open up. But when he is willing to do it, and there's not fear there. It's not like he's reticent to talk about things. But you have to ask the right questions with Christian Benford. And when you do, the reward, at least from a media point of view, an interviewer point of view, has been pretty good to watch. And that was another example right there. One more thing here before we get going. Got a few more minutes left. The Bills in the offensive line have been one of the better groups in the NFL for a couple years now. Pro Football Focus has them ranked as the number 3 offensive line going into this week, and that's down from the week before. And I would agree this is easily a top 5 line. Top 3, I think, is not out of the question. And it's been led for the longest time by Deion Dawkins at left tackle. He has been the spokesman. He has been at times the captain. And regardless, he is always a leader on this team. But lately, it has not been as good a year for Deion Dawkins on the field. Pro Football Focus had him with 14 pressures allowed in the last 4 games. My own numbers, I think I had him at 5 or 6 just from the Miami game. He was not very good. blocking or pass protecting in this game. Bradley Chubb, I think, was the better player. And Bradley Chubb is a first-round talent, highly paid. You expect a guy like that to be a pain in the neck. Regardless, this is not just this game. This has been all year with Dion Dawkins. I don't know if he's nursing an injury. He looks, for the most part, to be moving at the same level he always has. But this has not been a normal Dion Dawkins year for the Bills. I don't think it's costing the Bills games. In most cases, like this Miami game, you look at it and say, well, the Bills are doing 7 things wrong. Dion Dawkins might be number 6, but he's in the mix. Is it a concern going forward? I don't know. I've brought it up a few times with Carl Jones over on BKL Nightly and the Let's Talk Ball show. Please feel free to check that out on Spotify, YouTube, wherever. Also right here on Rochester First, too. So this is not, again, a brand new thing. This is not just the last couple games. It's been all year. It's not been every game. Dion has had some pretty good games. And again, we're talking about this based on the Dion Dawkins level. This is not compared to your run-of-the-mill average tackle. He's still one of the better ones in the game. But compared to what he's been doing the last 2 or 3 years, when he's been a pretty regular Pro Bowler, this year has not been that. What was the other stat that PFF had? Highest pressure rate allowed since his rookie year. And I would 100% agree with that. This has probably been Dawkins' worst season since he was a rookie. Maybe year 2 wasn't great either. I thought he was decent as a rookie, took a little step back in year 2, and then year 3 took off and has become one of the more dependable left tackles in the NFL. This year has not been as good. Going forward, again, I don't know if this is a concern. I don't think it is. Obviously, when you get to the playoffs, you're going to face a number of high-level pass rushers. So Dion will continue to get tested. This week against Tampa, Hassan Reddick might play. I know Reddick, I think, was out, did not practice yesterday. I didn't see what the Thursday practice report was today. If it is Reddick, he is a decently productive speed rusher, so it's a matchup to watch for sure. But when you watch Bills games, I would say keep a little bit of an eye on 73 because it has been noticeable the level he's played at this year. Not killer. He's not even close to the number one reason the Bills are losing games, but it has not been up to his standard. Speaking of injury reports, the Bills just released theirs from today. Mostly good. Bunch of guys were limited. Let's see, we had 8 guys limited yesterday, and all but 2 were upgraded to full today. So the only injury concerns for the Bills, obviously Dalton Kincaid, Fedarian Mathis, those were the 2 guys who did not practice today. Cam Lewis and Khalil Shakir were limited. Man, if Shakir can't play in this game, if you don't have Shakir and Dalton Kincaid for a game against an offense like Tampa, even at home, the Bills are going to have a hard time keeping up. But he's only a limited ankle and ribs injury. The one really positive one that I wanted to point out, Shaq Thompson was a full practice today. So Terrell Bernard has not looked very good. Really looked kind of slow against Miami to the point where you wonder if he's nursing something as well. Shaq Thompson being a full practice and a regular option offers the Bills certainly something they could do at linebacker if Terrell Bernard is compromised in any way. Bernard was a full practice today, too, on that ankle injury. But Shaq Thompson's been really, really good. And if the Bills need to go to him, I think most of Bills Mafia has a ton of confidence in his ability. Joey Bosa, A.J. Epinesa, Taron Johnson, all full practices today. Epinesa coming off the concussion. He should be good to go. Taron will be good to go. Especially if Chris Godwin plays, boy, would the Bills need Taron Johnson. So the Bills, I think, injury-wise, not in great shape because obviously Dalton Kincaid's a big loss. But Shaq Thompson's helpful, Taron Johnson's helpful, and the Bills will use all the help they can get. TJ Sanders, too, by the way, full practice. We talked earlier about how the Tampa's a little soft in the middle. TJ Sanders, a guy who can get after that potentially. All right, it's going to do it for me today. We're back on Monday talking about Bills and Bucks. Thanks for watching the Endgame. I'm Thad Brown. This is Rochester First.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 on demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.